In today's video, I'm creating some rustic farmhouse spring DIYs. Welcome to CreArtive by Nature, DIY and Decor. My name is Donna. So for this DIY, I am upcycling a tin can. I love to reuse old tin cans. So I am going to be covering this one with this fabric. It is natural cotton, and I've just rolled it just so I could get a rough estimate how big my piece needs to be, and I cut that down to size. Next, I soaked it in some coffee and I put it in the oven and allowed it to dry. I just find that it just works really well if you can put it in the oven. So I'm just going to use some hot glue to attach it to the outside of our tin. So in this video, I am teaming up with my friend Lianep from DIY Beauty on Purpose. She is so talented, and we are both creating some farmhouse spring DIYs. You'll definitely want to check her channel out. She's really talented and has so much creativity, and she is so sweet. I'm going to have the link to Lianep's channel in my description box, as well as the video card above, and at the end of this video, as well as being pinned at the top of the comments section for your convenience. So once the fabric has been glued around your tin, you can trim off any excess and then you can start to decorate. I have this burlap flower in my stash, and I removed the pearl little accent. I didn't think it fit the rustic farmhouse look, and I replaced it with this pretty yellow vintage button. Now for another rustic touch, you know me by now and my love of birch bark. I decided to add some birch bark leaves. So I just cut it out of this flat piece of birch bark. I collect my birch bark from the forest floor. I never peel it off the trees, as that could kill the trees. And then I allow it to dry and cure at home. So I cut out a total of 3 leaves, and now using my hot glue gun, I'm going to glue the flower onto the tin can. It's opposite from the seam that we had at the back side. And then I'm also going to be adding some hot glue to the back of these leaves and putting them into place. Now, my bark is thick, so it will create quite a dimensional look on the tin. If your birch bark is thinner, then you could probably mold it to the shape of the tin, but like I said, my birch bark is quite thick, so I couldn't do that, but I really like how it's looking. I think it just looks so cool and so unique. Definitely a rustic touch. So now I'm going to be adding some spring flowers. I got these yellow ones from a store called Dollarama. I think Dollar Tree has something similar. And these white ones I actually did get from Dollar Tree. I'm just using my wire cutters to cut them down to size so I can create a bouquet to fit on the inside of our tin. Now, you could use some fresh flowers instead if you'd like, but I had these in my stash, so I just went ahead and used those. Once they're cut down, then I'm going to be creating a bouquet. So the yellow ones, I just kind of fanned the stems out, and then I gradually added in the white flowers. So if your flowers are still too long, then go ahead and trim them down as needed. So this is just another little natural touch I like to add to my faux florals, and that is to use some real twigs. I will just cut some branches down to size and then mix them in amongst my florals, and it just makes it look more realistic. And that's it. It was so easy to make, and it looks so beautiful for any spring farmhouse decor. So for another rustic farmhouse spring DIY, I decided to go in my stash and I found this frame from Dollar Tree. I picked it up last year, and I happened to have a piece of birch bark that was really nice and flat, and I cut it down to size to fit within the frame. Next, I am going to be using this cotton fabric again. I just really think it works well with the rustic farmhouse look, and it looks great against our birch bark. So again, I'm just trimming it down to size so it fits on the inside of our birch bark. And then I'm going to be coffee dyeing this. Again, I just soak it in the coffee, squeeze out the excess, and then I laid it flat on a cookie tin. And then I put it in the oven to allow it to dry. I just had it at a low heat. So here's our fabric all ready to go. You can see how nice and flat that is. I found these stamps from Dollar Tree and I think they're so beautiful. So I'm going to be using some archival ink. I will have that listed in my Amazon affiliate store for you to check out if you'd like. I'm trying out the potting soil color, but I do end up changing it out and I'll show you why here in a minute. But first I wanted to test out my stamp placement as well as the ink color. So I'm just figuring out what stamps I want to use, and then what you will actually want to do is lay them out flat side up onto your fabric so you can make sure that the stamps placements will fit on your fabric. And then you want to take your acrylic stamping block and press that down, and then the stamps will be exactly where you need it. Now I'm going to ink up my stamp. And then I'm going to press it onto this coffee dyed manila tag, and that will give you an idea of what this will look like on the fabric. And that color was just too light, so I decided to go with black archival ink. Now archival ink is a permanent ink, so then it won't be affected by any water, which is great for a project like this. So you can see the black looks so much better on the tag, and I now put this ink onto the fabric, and you'll just see how beautiful that turned out. So now I'm going to be using some glue on the back of our fabric, and this is where I didn't want this to activate our ink. It really depends on what type of glue you use. I just used a glue stick and I pressed that down. But yeah, it just really depends on what type of glue you use. So I put that all into place, and now I am going to just add a little accent of the word spring that I cut out from an advertisement. And I've also got this piece of birch bark, and I'm just inking up the edges using some distress ink. And then I'm going to glue our pieces into place. So I really think this looks great, but I felt like it was still missing a little something, so I decided to add a simple jute twine bow to the top of our frame, and that is it. It's ready to put on display. I think this is such a lovely, pretty touch for some rustic spring decor. So this is a project I've been wanting to try out for a while. I have got these antique books, and they were actually my great grandma's book. They've got her signature in them. And I have been wanting to do something really neat with these, and I was inspired by some ideas that I had seen on Pinterest. So as you can see, this one's being bound, or an attempt to bind it with some tape to help hold it together. I just removed that tape, and there was some residue left from the adhesive. I'm not sure how I'm going to get that off, so I just left it as is. And now I am just going to start to embellish this. So I cut out a strip of fabric, and again I frayed the edges as I wanted to create a strip of birch bark to go around this bundle. There were a lot of birch trees in around where my great grandma had lived, and I thought it would be a really neat touch to add. Now, the key to this project is that I am going to try my best not to get any glue onto these books. So having this strip of fabric is actually going to be an important part of this project. So here I'm tearing off some thin strips of birch bark. It's just like the paper layer of the birch bark. And I'm going to be using my hot glue and attaching these strips to the fabric. So I'm just being careful not to add too much glue because I didn't want to add too much bulk, and I wanted this to be quite flexible so I could wrap it around our book bundle. So I continued to glue down any of the loose edges, and then I just made sure that both ends of the fabric didn't have any bark on them because I wanted to glue those two ends together. So our fabric birch bark strip is all complete, and now I wrapped it around the book bundle, and then I'm going to glue those strips together, as you can see right here. So I'm really loving how this is looking so far. And any spot that's lifting a little bit, I just go ahead and add just a little bit more of hot glue. So for another added vintage touch, I have coffee dyed this lace trim that I had in my stash, and I'm just going to wrap it around the middle of the birch bark strip. So I just found the middle of my lace and I glued it, just gently tacked it into place on the underside of our birch bark. And then I'm just going to tie a knot, and that will help to hold this all together. So I wanted to put some words on this, and I thought the best way to do that was to use a manila tag that I had coffee stained. And again, I'm just gonna use these words that I had cut out from an advertisement that was for spring. And I'm gonna distress the edges using this Distress Oxide ink. And again, that will be in my Amazon affiliate store. You could also pick it up at craft stores such as Michael's. I just add it to the edge of my words, and you can see the difference it gives right here. So I'm going to be using my glue stick again to attach these words to the manila tag. A manila tag is just a little shipping tag. So another added little touch I like to do is to highlight those words by using some black ink to go around the edge. This is something I like to do when I do mixed media art or some art journaling. It just really helps the words to pop. So now I'm going to be attaching this tag to our bundle using this string by just putting it through the hole. And then I'm going to be just tying this loosely around the lace. I didn't want to tie it on tight just in case I decided to move it. I wasn't exactly sure the placement I was going for at this point, so I just tied it on very loosely. These books won't be getting moved around much anyway since they're so delicate, but doesn't that look so pretty? So for a final touch, I am going to be adding this bird's nest that I had made. I will link the tutorial on how I made this down in my description box, and it also shows how I made these little eggs. So I glued those eggs into place, and then I generously apply some glue to the fabric and birch bark. I did not get any on the book, surprisingly, which is awesome. And I put the nest into place. So I should have tied this lace before I added the nest, but I was able to get a nice loose bow at it, and then that is it. It's ready to put on your farmhouse display. I think this is just so beautiful. It turned out exactly the way I had hoped. I think it is just such a beautiful spring farmhouse touch for your home decor. So as always, I would love to know what you think of these projects by leaving me a comment down below. I would like to thank you all so much for being here today, and I want to thank Lianep for joining me today. Don't forget to check her video out here to the right, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.